What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we're going to be breaking down Donna Adelson's statements that she made on the stand during a hearing where she wants bond, she wants to get out of jail, waiting for trial and help her team prep for trial. But some of the very important questions that the state asked her on cross, I absolutely expect to come up in her trial and to be used against her. We're going to break down some of the reasons she asked to get out on bond, but most importantly, some of her statements that could come back to bite her. So we talk about this in basically every case, that the parties are the most important people. Their statements are the most important people. The jurors are going to want to see and know, can I believe what it is that they are saying? In a civil case, it's a plaintiff and a defendant. In a criminal case, it's really just the defendant. Now, sometimes there's a victim that can testify. Sometimes, like in this case, there's not necessarily because he's no longer with us. But Donna Adelson took the stand in a hearing this week, today, actually, to discuss the conditions of her confinement. And the conditions of her confinement that she complained about were not getting enough medical care, medical treatment. She couldn't even get a Band-Aid. She has back pain. She couldn't get her steroid injection like she got before. They offered her maybe a Tylenol or something simple like that, or toilet paper to put on a cut. She got attacked and touched in different places, in the shower and in the jail, and she complained about that. She didn't feel safe. People forcing her to buy stuff from her money from the commissary. All sorts of complaints that really suck and shouldn't happen to people. And also things that we say all the time, like, this is why you don't want to go to jail. This is why it sucks. This is part of the deterrence. This is part of the make sure you obey the law and don't break the law. But she is presumed innocent at this point. So she's saying these are totally unfair conditions. Now, there's a very big thing in Donna Adelson's case that we knew about from the very jump, and that's where and how and when she was arrested. After Charlie Adelson was convicted at the airport with a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country of Vietnam. And the court, while he does have to consider her conditions in jail, which she is now in protective custody, she wasn't before, and a lot of these things have gone away in protective custody, but she says she's not given the proper amount of sleep or exercise. She sleeps 2 to 3 hours a day. And the defense, the number one argument made by the defense, and frankly, the best argument made by the defense, is all of these conditions, all of these issues make it impossible for Donna Adelson to help them in her preparation of her own defense. That's a very important right of a defendant. But in case you haven't noticed, there's a lot of incarcerated defendants waiting on trial. And while it's not ideal and not perfect, you have to balance those factors. Is she a danger to the community? Probably not. I don't think that's a big factor in this situation, but is she a flight risk? That's the big question for the court. And that is where, after they went through, oh, they offered you a steroid pack, it's really not that bad in jail, is kind of what it felt like the state attorney was arguing at the beginning of their cross. But the second part of their cross, the end of their cross, focused in on her attempt to flee and what it was. And they just kind of opened the door and let her explain herself, her decisions, what she was thinking, what she was doing. And from my perspective, this is something that, whether or not she takes the stand, the state can and should use against her with, again, a guilty mindset, consciousness of guilt. What was she doing after another co-conspirator, as the state is alleging, was convicted? Multiple co-conspirators are getting convicted. She knows the state's getting close to her. So what does she try to do? And now they have statements of what she did, and we'll hear her explain herself and see how good of a job she did in different ways the state might be able to use this during her trial.
My forearm. Okay, and you're pointing.
Let me jump ahead a little. Sorry.
Down my arm.
And for that injury, you did have an X-ray. They did go over that X-ray with you and let you know that there was no fracture or dislocation.
There was no fracture. That's what she told me. I didn't think it was a fracture.
No. Or dislocation of your shoulder or arm.
No, there's just pain.
And they also went over your chest X-ray results with. You ultimately received the Band-Aid and Neosporin for the cut on your elbow.
Yes, I got that on Saturday. When did I get that? On Monday.
Okay, so within a day or two of the cut occurring.
Yes.
And You said that if you are given a bond, you will reside in Tallahassee, you will follow court orders. But when you were afraid of being arrested, right, Charlie Adelson's trial, isn't it true that you hoped that you could get to the airport before you were arrested?
I wasn't afraid of being arrested.
What were you trying to get to the airport in time for? In that jail
My
cell?
husband and I literally shocked. My husband and I literally shocked and traumatized at what had happened to Charlie. And he said, we need to just get some peace. We need to catch our breath. We're going to go away somewhere. And I thought it was a good idea because I couldn't think straight.
So that's her answer. Her husband and she decided to get away, find some peace because they couldn't, catch their breath and think straight. They were so traumatized about what happened to Charlie, who the state is alleging is a co-conspirator in this crime, getting convicted. That's her story. And now we're going to get into those little pesky details about what did you search, how did you land on Vietnam, and why only a one-way ticket?
I really couldn't think straight. I was so upset, and so was he. And it was his idea. He said, sweetheart, let's go, just get away. We're going to just get away somewhere so we can have some time to think.
Okay, so your testimony is that you weren't trying to go to Vietnam because you wouldn't be able to be extradited from there.
So my husband actually had said, we've been to Vietnam before with friends. We were on vacation, and it really was like a place of peace. And so he said, if we go to a non-extradition country, then if the law enforcement decided that they wanted to arrest you or me, whatever, both, he said, we won't be sitting in a foreign prison waiting months to go back. We could buy a ticket and we can go home. And my understanding was that I could go home and I could turn myself in if that's what they wanted.
So she picked a one-way ticket and she picked Vietnam so that she wouldn't be sitting in a foreign prison, and somebody would just let her know, hey, there's a warrant out for your arrest. They want to file charges against you or your husband or both. Could you please kindly buy a ticket, fly back home so we can throw you in jail and prosecute you? That's her explanation. So she admits they knew it might be coming. She admits they knew they might get arrested. She admits she was traumatized and scared since Charlie's trial and the resolution or ending of Charlie's trial in a guilty verdict. But they were just going to Vietnam because it was a very peaceful place that they have traveled to in the past with friends. And it just so happened to be a non-extradition country. And they just so happened to get a one-way ticket. Now, I don't like calling people liars. I do like to try and think, will a jury take this seriously? 6 to 12 people that are sitting in a jury box looking at a client. So what I tell my clients, they are not going to know you. I've got clients of all sorts. I've got pastors. I've got people who don't have jobs. I've got people that are CEOs. I've got teachers. I've got all sorts of people. And I say, they're not going to know who you are. So if you say things that are totally illogical and make no sense, let's think about that. And let's dig into how can we explain this? You're saying this is the truth. That's fine. How can we explain it with the other details that are objective that we know? And that's what I would tell Donna Adelson, because I don't think a reasonable juror who does not know who Donna Adelson is going to buy that. You guys let me know in the chat if you agree or disagree. Do you think that sounds plausible? Does her explanation make sense? Because the state can put that up there and show all the other facts that they know and have law enforcement testify to how she was acting, what the Google searches were, when they were searching those things, conversations with Charlie, right, on the recorded jail calls. Is that going to seem like it makes sense? Is that going to seem truthful? And then once, even if she doesn't testify, once you can make a liar out of the criminal defendant in front of the jury, it's very hard for them to start believing what the defense's theories are.
Okay. But you were hoping to make it out of America in time before you were arrested, right?
I wanted to get away. He wanted to get away. That's what we wanted to do. And it wasn't, I mean,
You can just see how that would read in a transcript. I wanted to get away. He wanted to get away. So if they were to just read that from the transcript, which again, we'll see what context she adds, but it's not going to look good in front of a jury.
we spoke to our attorneys. I asked them, they said there's no pending. We purposely called them to make sure it was legal to do it. And they said there's no, what were their words? There's no pending charges and there's no warrants. So you want to go, go. So
Would make me a little nervous if I'm the lawyer and she's saying this, like, if you want to go, go. It's not technically illegal. It's like, and that's true. There was no restriction on their travel. So they could have gone to Vietnam. Now, I don't advise clients to do things that are illegal, and I would never say that Rashbaum did that in this scenario. It's weird that they only bought a one-way ticket, and who knows if they even told Rashbaum they were going to Vietnam or that they searched non-extradition or things like that. Who knows? But she's opening up her conversation with her lawyer that they said it was okay. And defense counsel later argues that even the state, the prosecutor said it was okay for them to travel, that there were no travel restrictions, which obviously there's no travel restrictions on any of us that are citizens. Just because somebody in the media reports one of us may have committed a crime, that doesn't mean our travel is restricted. But if we're under investigation and we Google search non-extradition countries and we buy a one-way ticket there, it's pretty damning evidence and pretty damning context.
you ask your attorneys and they tell you that, I'm going.
But Dan did tell you, as you say in the jail call, that knowing what they're thinking up there, I don't know if you'll make it out in time. I really don't. But that he said you might, or you might get to the airport and they'll stop you. It could happen.
That's what he said.
Right.
And I think those jail calls are between her and Charlie, and she's saying what Dan said. I don't think those are actual recorded conversations between her and Dan.
So you went to the airport knowing that they could stop you at the airport. You could end up being arrested.
Yeah, that's what Dan said.
Right. And when you were looking at places to go a couple of days after Charlie Adelson's trial, you were specifically looking, though, for countries that did not have extradition with the U.S.
For the reason I just told you.
Right. And the reason that you're saying that you were looking for countries with no extradition was so that you could get back faster in order to be arrested in the U.S.
No, that's not what I said. It's because, I don't know, maybe we watch too much TV or too many movies, but I've seen movies where people are stuck in like third world prisons and waiting and waiting and waiting. And my feeling was, this is not what we want to happen. If the state says they want us to come back,
theoretically, I understand the process there, right? You don't want to stay in the horrible prisons. I mean, she's here complaining about the first world prisons. So imagine what the third world prisons are like. So I get that, except it's just like you're really making me take a leap to think you Googled this, you chose this, you bought a one-way ticket just so you could fly back as soon as you found out we wanted to arrest you.
A ticket, we'll come back on our own terms. We don't have to be else somewhere. We'll come back home.
So we'll come back on our own terms. Again, words that are absolutely going to be used against her. You want to come back on your own terms when you wanted to, isn't that right? That's going, if she does take the stand, these words are absolutely going to be used on her cross. If she doesn't take the stand, I still think they can find ways to use these words to prove the consciousness of guilt.
And turn ourselves in.
Couldn't you have done that no matter what country you went to?
No.
No?
No.
You couldn't have found out that you had a warrant for your arrest and come back if there was an extradition
Well,
policy?
not if they would, I'm not law enforcement, but it appears that they would notify law enforcement in that country and then they could hold you in a jail for God knows how long. And I didn't want that to happen. So he said, well, that's why we'll do it this way, honey. That way, if they do notify us, so we get a phone call from our attorney or from law enforcement, then we'll buy a ticket, we'll go home.
Okay.
So again, she's not an expert. She's not in law enforcement. She's not a lawyer, so she wouldn't know this. But generally speaking, Tallahassee prosecutors would probably prefer to say, hey, Dan, we want to arrest her. Can you call her and have her come back regardless of what country she's in? And if they really wanted to fly back, they could do it. But The difference is if she says no, if she's in Vietnam, she might be able to do it on her terms. If she's in an extradition country, she wouldn't be able to do it on her terms, right? Which is kind of the point of the context of her entire statement here.
And so it would have been on our terms. That was the point. That was the reason that he thought that was a good idea.
And your
Before
testimony.
you continue, Ms. Dugan, we are over time. If you please can get to your most pertinent questions.
Yes, sir. I guess your testimony ultimately, though, is that you were not trying to go to a country with no extradition because you were trying to avoid being held accountable for this charge. That's your testimony?
I didn't do this.
Okay.
Being held accountable for this is not what happened.
Being arrested for this case.
Being arrested?
Right. That was not what you were trying to avoid by trying to go to a non-extradition country.
To get our heads on straight and just breathe.
That's all I have to do.
Any redirect examination for Mrs. Adelson?
So that's it. That's her statement on the back half of cross during the hearing today that I think is really going to come back to haunt her. Anytime a criminal defendant takes a stand, it's a risk. You think you're talking about bond conditions and you're talking about jail conditions and why she needs to get out, but because she has those facts and details at the beginning of her case, that makes all of that relevant, all of that fair game, all of that something the judge has to consider. And at the end of the day, the judge took it under advisement. I would be shocked if he gave her any chance to get out. I don't care if it's in Tallahassee. I don't care if it's a curfew. I don't care if it's an ankle monitor. I would be really, really shocked if he let her out of jail. If she was getting abused and the conditions were, significantly worse than maybe some kind of house arrest, I just would be really surprised if she got out in this case, in this scenario, when she's charged with these charges and there is this amount of evidence against her at this point. She's still presumed innocent, but the amount of evidence against you is a consideration on whether or not you're going to be able to be out on bond. So that's kind of my thoughts there. We will see what the judge actually decides. And let me know if you guys are still following this case. Trial's coming up soon, so we'll be following that trial as well. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you haven't already. That's all we got. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a pase you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.